Hey everybody, my name is Stanley. Welcome back to Challenge the Faith. Today I am super excited. We're doing a little bit of a different format to our episode today. It's just going to be me and Jillian, and we're going to be talking about a book. We're going to be talking about her testimony. We had her on an episode not that long ago, and we were just really diving into a lot of things about loss. What happens when God doesn't meet your expectation? And one of the things that she said that I loved was what happens when he does things that are just not on your script. And so today we're going to be diving into this. We're going to be tackling a lot of challenging topics about the faith, but topics that need to be talked about. So I hope you enjoy it. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Jillian. I want you to get an opportunity to introduce yourself. I know you've done it once, but whoever maybe didn't watch that episode, give them a little background of who you are, your faith journey, and then maybe just a little touch on your testimony if you don't mind.
Okay, sure. I'm Jillian Chambers. I was born at an early age. Just kidding. No, actually, I was born at an early age. We all were. But I have been walking with the Lord a long time. I actually got saved every week when I was 5, just to make sure. Just raise my hand. All the teachers loved me because they knew at least one person was going to get saved in that Sunday school class every Sunday. Actually started, but like, again, she's still saved. Yeah. Just, I just want to make sure. Wasn't sure what happened in between, Sunday and Sunday. So anyway, but I've been walking with the Lord a long time. A lot of people know the delivering power of God. That's their testimony. He took them out of something. And my testimony is under the keeping power of God. So he kept me from things. And obviously through relationships and choices and my amazing parents. But I grew up in the church. And then I married a minister, a pastor, a preacher, evangelist, and we traveled the world, really. We were instrumental in bringing a sound of worship in the late 80s, early 90s that was not there, didn't exist for a student generation. And so we were able to travel all over the world and just unleash the sound of worship, which then led us to Nashville, surprise, Music City. And God used a lot of voices to open our heart and our mind to consider and pray about starting a church here. So in 1997, in the 1900s, ladies and gentlemen, we started the Oasis Church. It was in Nashville. And through a series of events, we ended up acquiring several churches. So at one point, we had several campuses. And it was a great community of people. It was a great community of faith, a lot of diversity, not just ethnic diversity, but we had a lot of business background, music, arts, writers, investors. We just had a great group of people. And then we transitioned out of our church because my husband fell very sick. We had black mold in our house, and it really impacted his mental health. So it put us on a mental health journey, and we ended up we did find a lot of help. That'd be a great episode to talk about sometime, just about holistic and what that does to somebody, what mold can do to a person's brain. And a lot of our mental health issues, I'm not saying all of them, but a large percent of them are due to people that are inhaling and living in a mold-fested building or home, and they don't realize it. And as soon as they get out of that house, they won't have the same symptoms, but now you have to clean it out of your system because you've been inhaling it. So we were on a journey for about a little over a year. First of all, identifying what caused him to become all of a sudden out of nowhere manic, schizophrenic, and bipolar. That was a journey. And then as we began to detox his body and he came back to us, 2020 hit. So we came out of the church and we were going back on the road. And then the world shut down. Yay, that was fun. So the world shut down. And actually, interestingly enough, we decided to go on Facebook Live every week and just, worship, speak, have fun, talk to people. And interestingly enough, Sas, we'd have 15, 20,000 views on our Facebook. Now, it was over a period of time. It wasn't at once, but we would have thousands of people watching. And so while the world was shut down, we found this niche, of, wow, we actually can reach the whole world, even beyond our 4 walls of a location, of an address. And then the world began to open back up and mine shut down. My husband, I found him on September 23rd. He had passed away in the middle of the night. And I had just turned 50 years old. And so here I am, a widow at 50, have no clue what that world looks like because, we stereotype widowhood. I did. I thought widows were, gray hair and wrinkly and looked a lot like my great-great-great-grandmother, and so, here I am one, and, I just went on this massive search to just figure out how I do this. I got married when I was 19, and here I just turned 50, so I have been Danny's wife for, almost 31 years. My identity was in Danny's wife. Everything I did, we did together. We were partners. I mean, he took me everywhere with him. I didn't minister alone. He didn't minister. We just always did everything together. And so I was thrust into this world of just honestly, it was very scary because I wasn't used to being by myself. Here I am by myself. My kids, I have 5 kids called my tribe of 5. I love them. And 4 were married at the time, and I had a 15-year-old who was in high school when he passed. So it was just me and her. And just navigating the reality of really the reality of death happening without warning, without preparation. And like you said in a previous episode, having to come to a place where I surrendered my life script. Because in my life script, that was not the same. That was not included, him passing away, me finding him, just the devastation of every kid coming to the house and just the mourning and the roaring, the wailing and the crying. It was just awful. But even in the midst of all of that, God was there, and he kept revealing himself time and time again. And a very dear friend of ours pastors a church in Alabama, actually Alabama and Georgia, called Church the Highlands. His name is Chris Hodges, and he's been a friend of ours for years, and I called him. He was the 3rd call I made. And he began to walk with me along this journey. And in walking along this journey, I discovered so many things. Some of the things I discovered was there's a real deficit of information and resource when it comes to somebody who is going through death, is going through loss, specifically a woman or a man who's lost their spouse. There's a thing that I experienced called identity displacement. We've seen identity crisis. I know who I am in Christ. I just didn't know where I fit. I didn't know where a place was because I wasn't married anymore.
Right.
He was gone, but I didn't really know how to be single. And most of our culture categorizes you in married or single. And there's a lot of types of married couples, and there's a lot of types of single people. But it's one box for each, and you check one or the other. And I remember I remember traveling and being a guest at a church, and I remember looking at the Connect card and thinking, I don't know what to check because I'm not married anymore, but I don't feel single, So you go through this identity displacement, trying to figure out, okay, well, who's my community? I had a pastor's wife. She was really sweet. She's a really good friend. And she said, I know you're a widow, but your title does not determine your identity. I said, I agree with that, but it does determine your community. Because when I was a pastor, I had a community of pastors around me. When I'm a mother, there's other mothers that you start to relate with, you start doing life with. Now that I'm a widow, I have a community out there. Yeah. And so what I did discover was there's a lot of women and a lot of men that have lost their spouse, and they have identity displacement. They don't know where they belong. So over the last couple of years, I found myself in rooms and places and spaces, on phone calls, on Zoom calls, with people searching desperately and frantically to find just resource and help. And I'll be honest, I mean, when you wake up to your husband passing away, you're kind of mad. You get kind of mad at God. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I mean, anybody, you've gone through loss in your family. I mean, anybody who goes through loss like that, when God doesn't follow what you think he should follow, when he doesn't do what you think he should do, you kind of feel rejected and abandoned.
Right.
And a lot of people don't know how to sit in that.
Yeah.
And the church doesn't tell us how.
Yeah.
If we're mad at God, then we have a problem. Even being sad, we want you to hurry up and be happy. Hurry up, get through it, or have more faith. But you know what? It's not okay. I don't feel good. I'm mad at God right now. I don't want to cry. and he's okay with me doing that.
Right.
And I think a lot of times we get lost in what are we supposed to do. It's like image protection, image management, rather than managing our emotions. We're managing our image. And he didn't tell us we have to manage our image. He can sit in that with us. He's with us in those moments. And I think I mean, I think about, we just, even thinking about Jesus, on the cross, it's like, if you go back to scripture, it says he was crucified at 9 a.m. and he was still on the cross for hours after that. And I can't imagine what he felt, knowing he could jump down off that cross any moment. He had the power to do it, but he didn't do it.
Yep.
And I think even in our suffering, sometimes we want to manage our image and we want to prove to people that we can do things that we can do. But I know in my journey, I had to wait. I had to wait through the grief. I had to wait through the sorrow. I had to wait through it. And in that waiting, something has been developed, inside of us. And interestingly enough, I found myself over a period of probably 6 months after my husband passed away, all of a sudden, I felt this onslaught of phone calls. People from all over, relationships that we had with pastors and ministers and different ones across the country, that someone in their congregation, their community lost their spouse and they didn't know what to say to them.
Yeah.
So they would call me, and I found myself on the phone with these people that had just freshly lost their spouse. And here I am. I'm 6 months in. I don't even know if I'm doing this right. I'm not healed at all. I mean, God and I broke up every day, and then we got back together. I mean, it was like every day I broke up with God. He did something every day to make me mad. I broke up with him every single day. And, but I found myself on these phone calls really sharing my journey, but then I kind of said the same thing, over and over. And then I'll never forget, Pastor Chris was sharing about, who Rick Warren is? He wrote Purpose Driven Life. Okay. So Rick Warren's son passed away, and Rick had gone through this season of grief, and he identified these stages of grief, and Chris was sharing them. And I remember just listening to these stages of grief and going, that's exactly what I've done. It starts with shock because you're so disoriented. And you just honestly, for months, I mean, I'll be honest with you, it's been almost 5 years and I still have dreams that he's alive. And I wake up and I'm like, is he here? And it's really disorienting, super disorienting. And so the first one is shock. And then you go from shock to sorrow, where you're just like, you know what, this is just sad. I miss his voice. I miss his presence. I miss life like it used to be. And it's just sad. So you go through shock, and then you go through sorrow. And then you hit struggle, where kind of the anger comes in. And you're just like, God, I don't understand. How did you let this happen? What about this? What about that? Right? What about this promise? What about that? Why did you could raise up Lazarus? Why? I mean, hello.
Sure.
And so that's where you start comparing and bargaining, and you start being angry, and you're just like, oh. But then after struggle comes surrender. And that's where I learned how to surrender my script. That's the moment that I realized I have to surrender, and I have to surrender my why. Why did this happen? Why did you let this happen?
Right.
I had to surrender my need to know why, because ultimately I don't know that there would be an answer that anyone could give me that would make it better.
Yeah.
Because the answer that I needed was for him to not have died.
Right.
And that's something that had happened. So I couldn't change it. And so once I surrendered that, the next stage that Rick Warren teaches is sanctification, which sounds very, very spiritual. But basically, it's just where you start to see God turn your loss into a lesson, your test into a testimony. You start to see him in everything around you. You start to realize he's been paying attention. He's been listening to me. He's been with me here. He's been with me there. And I have a story. So right after Danny passed, I was mad because I had written a book, and it hit me. I was like, you're never going to read my book. And I was pounding on the counter in the bathroom, and I was like, who's going to help me off the stage when I speak? Who's going to coach me? Because every time I ever spoke all over the world, my husband would be there to help me down, help me up, help me down. But then he would coach me afterwards, and he just made me better. And I just remember pounding on the counter, being like, who's going to do this and who's going to do that? And just a few weeks later, I was asked to speak at our church. And it was during our 21 days of prayer and fasting, and it was January of 2021. So it was just a few months after Danny passed. And I was so nervous. I just hadn't spoken, since his celebration of life on a stage. And I was really nervous, but I knew I had to press through that tension and that discomfort. I just knew I had to do it for me, not to impress anybody, but I knew I needed it just for for me. And so I remember finishing, sharing what I shared. And this is crazy. There was a young man standing at the bottom of the steps. Well, he used to be one of our interns. He had gone through our school of ministry, and he was also attending our church. And he was sitting there, and he has his hand behind his back, and he had his hand up, and he was Latino. He said, Pastora. And he put his hand up. And I was like, oh, hey, Michael. And so he helped me down the stairs. And he says, oh, Pastora, that was so beautiful. And I said, well, thank you, Michael. And then he reaches out. He had his hand on his back, and he had 2 roses. And he goes, one's for me and one's from Pastor Danny. And so there I was, worried about who was going to help me down the stairs. And he was there. And not only that, but God woke this young man up, whatever time, to go somewhere that was open 24 hours, put a thought in him that said, hey, buy 2 roses, one for, one from you, one from Pastor Danny, and then be there at the base of the stage when she's done speaking. So it's kind of like, that sanctification of where God's like, I'm paying attention. I'm listening to you. I saw you when you were pounding your fist on the, on the edge of the bathroom, on that bathroom counter. I saw you whenever you were crying out. I saw you when you felt alone. And I made sure somebody was there just when you needed it. And so after sanctification, you start to get this courage to begin to serve somebody else. And when you get out of yourself and start serving others, not only spiritually does it do something for you, but physically, in grief, your dopamine and your serotonin are depleted. So when you serve other people, we get what's called a servant's high. And so you start feeling good about yourself, but it's really your body's biological chemistry that's why God tells us to serve one another. It's part of the reason, because he knows how he biologically made you. And he knows if you only focus on yourself, you will implode. Narcissism, you will shut down. It's toxic to your body, to your system. But when you serve somebody else, whether it's a smile, whether it's you just go help somebody, lift a burden, go serve. I remember 2 months after my husband died, I grabbed my 15-year-old daughter and I said, we're going to go serve the homeless. We served him Thanksgiving. We served him Christmas. We worked with our local, outreaches. And I remember thinking, you know what? Y'all have no idea. This is for me. These people have nothing. And I'm coming into, I'm coming in thinking I'm going to help them. And I leave going, oh my God, they helped me so much, And so after serve, I actually added a stage. I hope Rick Warren's okay with that. But I added reinvention, because we have to reinvent. Our life won't be the same. And I remember one day it hit me. I was like, my life's not going to be the same. It will never be the same. So no matter who in our lives have passed, however they impacted our life, those moments are now memories that we hold on to. They're still a part of our life, just a different part. They're still in our life, just a different location, in just a different way. So rather than having a physical person, now you have their, I think sometimes you can feel their spirit, you can feel their character, you can feel, sometimes I even, this may sound a little creepy for people, but I promise I heard my husband laughing a couple times, because, he's crazy like that. But after having this conversation with people so many times, I decided, you know what, I probably should put a book together, because there's only so many words I can say in a day. And so I did. I gathered some information. I took those stages, and I just began to insert stories and examples and experiences. And that's where I came up with Living Beyond the Loss, Pursuing Life After Death. And so this book is really to help people find hope and healing. It's kind of like, when your wife got pregnant, there's a book out there called What to Expect While You're Expecting. Most people that get pregnant get that book, right? And what does it do? It tells you what to expect. So then what do? You start expecting what it tells you to expect. And then you start experiencing what you started expecting. So now I'm like, oh, I really am craving this. Oh my goodness, I am losing sleep. Oh my goodness, I am uncomfortable, So, and I realize there's nothing like that for people that have lost their spouse or people that have gone through loss. There's a lot of books out there about heaven and different ones that are great books. They're great resources. But I know what I was searching for. I needed someone to tell me what to expect. And so when I got a hold of those steps from Rick Warren through Chris Hodges, it was like, okay, shock is normal. Disorientation is normal. It's okay to pick up my phone and remember and think, what am I picking up my phone for? I remember driving down the middle of the road going, where am I going? You have what's called grief fog, and you forget. But if no one tells you that that's normal, you think you're losing your mind. And you think, oh my God, something's wrong with me, But if I can say, hey, it's normal, just get a journal and just write some things down. Write to-do list down, write this down, write this person's number down. Because in the moment, and I think all of us actually go through this because of the culture we live in is so filled with stress opportunities that we can forget things. But I mean, I had to get a journal and I would write stuff down because I thought I would remember. In the moment, you're like, oh, I remember that. No, I do not remember what you said at all. And it's so funny because even simple things like passwords to like Amazon Prime or, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what those are. I didn't know what they were. I had to like search through his phone and figure out like, I don't even know who does my lawn? I remember looking up lawn care and calling all the people in his phone. And I mean, several of them we didn't use anymore until I finally found the guy. It's terrible. And I'm like, hi, we have a jungle in our front yard. I need help. But, these are all practical things that people don't think about, And so I hopefully in this book, Living Beyond the Loss, it will help people not only know what to expect, but also give them hope that this is temporary. You know what I'm saying? This season is temporary. Yes, the person is gone. And yes, life is different, but your shock, your sorrow, and your struggle, they're all temporary. And when you get to that place of surrender, everything shifts, everything changes. And I think if I could say anything to encourage someone is don't make a permanent decision in a temporary season.
Come on.
A lot of times we make these decisions and I mean, some people have to sell their house because they can't afford to stay there without their husband's income. There's things that you may not have a choice, but if you have a choice, I tell people wait a year because things that you maybe get rid of, you can't get back.
Yeah. Right.
And there might be a day you wake up and you just can't stand to see a certain thing. And then 3 months later, that's the very thing you hold on to. You know what I'm saying? So it's been a journey and I just felt like, you know what? I don't want to waste my pain. If I'm going to go through this and I'm going to grow through this, I'm going to help somebody else go and grow through it too. So that's kind of where the book came from.
Oh, there's so much to unpack there, right? Because you're really talking through a multitude of things. A couple of things stood out to me was the image thing. I feel like even when you're talking through that, I was thinking through how many people will use a season as a badge that they wear for the rest of their life. Right? Like I talked about this a lot with men, right? Who say like, okay, they're in the business world. So I'm a businessman. Therefore I have to act, talk, everything has to be in that vein, right? And it's like, well, I'm not necessarily a businessman. It's just the way in which I make income, right? Or for a mom, like with my wife, she stay at home. And so she'll be like, I'm a stay-at-home mom, right? And then she's like, but she used to say things like, oh, I'm just a stay-at-home mom. I'm just. And I'd be like, stop saying I'm just. Like you're a stay-at-home mom. God has given you this opportunity to steward our child in this way. And so I think about image and how we'll use things that happen in our life and make that our badge and wear that for the rest of our lives. And oftentimes we'll use it in a detrimental way of saying, well, I act this way because of X. I'm jaded because of this. Right? And what I'm hearing you say is, while you experienced the loss, while you went through everything you just outlined, you didn't allow it to become a badge that you wear in a negative connotation. You chose to wear it and say, hey, listen, I'm going to be a light sitting on a hill, right? And I'm going to shine for the people that I would even say like this demographic of believers and non-believers, somewhat forgotten, somewhat put in a corner. I think it's almost like we don't want to, we're sorrowful that this happened, but like, we don't really know how to like go through this with you. Right? Like if I've never walked through that loss, I think there's a lot of people who may be watching this going, okay, I know somebody who's a widow. What do I even say? Right? So I was curious from your take and I love it because we'll go back to the book, but I want to answer that question because we had somebody after our last episode actually ask me that specific question. Like, okay, I heard that they're a widow now. What do I say to them? How can I be comforting to them in that season? I was just curious your take on that.
It's interesting because that is the number one question that we get when someone calls me and says, my best friend's husband passed away or blah, blah, blah. And I will tell you this, a lot of times people don't say anything because they're afraid to say the wrong thing. But it's been my experience that saying nothing is worse than saying the wrong thing. So I would say take a risk.
That's good.
Because ultimately you can't really say the right thing. The right thing would be your husband's alive. You see what I'm saying? So for someone who has lost a spouse or has lost a child or something, in that moment, they're so fragile because really they just want them back. And so people, I don't know that it's they say the wrong thing. It could be that we hear the wrong thing, because we're filtering it through our pain and we're filtering it through our sorrow. But I will say this, you run the risk of saying the wrong thing. You run the risk of hurting that person. But on the flip side, being the person on the other side of the table, I would rather you run that risk than ghost me.
Sure.
Because I believe presence is a vote.
Come on. Expand upon that.
Your presence is a vote.
Yeah.
So when you show up for people, you're voting for them.
Wow.
So even if you don't know how to show up, if you don't know if you were saying the right thing or doing the right thing, but when you show up for them, you're saying, I love you, I believe in you, I'm so sorry. One of my mentors in this journey of grief, she lost her husband like 15 years ago, and she said, one of the best things you can tell someone, this sucks. I'm so sorry. This is awful. It's terrible, and I'm so sorry. Rather than try to fix it, like, you're going to be fine. God needed another flower in his garden. Don't ever say that. One of the things someone said to me, which you'll get a kick out of, was, God will be your husband.
Oh.
And I'm like, ew, he's my father. No, he is not my husband. No, for real. People say, God will be your husband. Now, I will say this. There's a void that my husband left in my heart that God can fill.
That's right.
But what happens if I get remarried? What is God going to do now?
Yeah, God.
That's just weird. You know what I'm saying? So don't ever say that to, at least to me, don't say it to me. But yeah, I think, mostly recognizing that the person, they're just sad. And a lot of people say, should we talk about him? Should we talk about them? Well, in the very beginning, talking about the person will probably be a little bit more painful.
Sure.
But there is a point in time where we want you to talk about them because we don't want them to be forgotten.
That's right.
You don't, and so it's very intricate.
Yep.
But the best thing to do is just listen.
Yeah.
So even if you just say, I love you and I'm so sorry, and then listen, that's really the best thing. And then just be there. It's hard. People will say, tell me, call me if you need me. And so, like, for me, you just set me up to be needy. So if I imagine if I call you, you look at your phone and you go, oh, she needs something. Well, I struggle with a little pride on that because I don't want to be needy. So I would probably drown before I call you because I just don't want to be needy. And let me know what you need is another one. And that's hard because we don't know what we need, And so, your sister Michelle they came in with capes on. Her and Scott came in, and I mean, I didn't even realize she was at my house. She'd been at my house setting up food. Like, I think the first or second day. I think the first night. I think the night I found out Danny was gone, she was there. And she didn't call me and ask me if she could come over. She just came over and brought food. She set up the whole thing. I mean, she was on it. I mean, it was just like, oh, okay. That's the kind of action you need in the beginning. And then once the celebration of life is over, check on people.
Yeah.
Just check on them because that's when the reality hits. I literally found my husband on a Wednesday. Had to go meet with the memorial home on Thursday. Had to pick out his plot on Friday. Had to identify his body on Saturday. Had to bury him on Sunday. And had to plan for his celebration of life after that. You don't have time to go. Like, it doesn't feel real.
Right.
And so everybody's there in those first days. I mean, I remember I had a house full of people to where my kids were like, we all gathered in my bedroom and my whole house was filled with a bunch of people. And my kids were like, Mom. And so I went out and asked everyone, hey guys, thank you for your support, but we're going to need some family time. I mean, I had so much support, in the beginning. But then after the celebration of life, everybody goes back to their life. And I did have a group of people that checked on me a lot, and I'm so grateful for that. But I think don't be afraid to at least reach out.
Yeah, true.
And don't allow that mind monster that says you're going to say the wrong thing to shut your voice, because really silence is not golden in that season. And again, your presence says, I vote for you. I vote for you. I care about you. I affirm you. You matter to me. So that's a big deal.
That's great. One of the things Kiana and I always say in our home is we practice show up culture. So show up culture was like when we had Trey, we felt that same way, right? Frankly, the pride that we had is like, okay, I was a top performer at work and she was a top performer at work. I'm like, it's a kid. There are a lot of people been having kids for a long time. We'll be just fine, all right? And we had so much pride going into our child, and then we got just like basically decimated. Like we had no idea what we were doing. Postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety. I had no idea how to steward that. It was just a nightmare. And I remember us being like, I'm not like texting them. Like, what am I going to ask you? Like, can you go get diapers? Like, what? And then now we have all these friends that are having kids. And we were like the first in our friend group to have kids. And we would do this thing called show up culture. Well, Keanu like literally just show up to people's houses with like a mop, and she'll do their laundry, and she'll have like the non-toxic detergents or whatever this person wants, right? And it's just show up culture. And it's exactly what you're talking about. And one of the things we found was that we felt like the enemy was using our concern of being like needy, to your point. I love what you said about the needy thing, because I think a lot of people battle that. And then what happened is, nope, we didn't ask for any help, and then we were drowning even more. And so I think it's to your point of be the kind of believer that's a show up culture kind of person.
Love that show up culture.
That's so good. So we'll go back to the book. You write this book, you write it from a place of experiencing what it's about. If I'm watching this or I'm listening to this today, and maybe that shock just hit. And I know we talked about the Rick Warren, kind of the steps, but if you were going to say, I'm picking up your book for the first time, what is maybe a key thing in that book? And I'm sure there's tons. What's a key message in there that if I'm watching this, I'm listening to this right now and going, I needed to hear that. I needed to read that. What would be something you'd point out in the book?
Oh my gosh. Well, I would say that, again, it's temporary. You know, what we're going through is temporary. It feels like it's going to be forever. Like, am I ever going to get over this? Am I ever going to stop crying? Am I ever going to stop thinking about this? You know, one of the things I bring out is there's a point in time where they move from your head to your heart. So your mind is not as consumed. It's like you look everywhere and you don't see them. You see what I'm saying? So your thoughts are consumed with loss, absence, absence, absence. I felt abandoned. And so over time, I realized, you know what? He will slide from my mind into my heart. And I realized he's going to be with me no matter where I go. So now, instead of thinking about looking and seeing everywhere he's not, now I look and see everywhere he's been. And I realize he's with me. You know, we don't ask Christ into our head. We ask him into our heart. And so there really is a transition in loss. You know, one of my best friends, her daughter died. She's an artist here in town. If I said her name, a lot of people know who it is. She passed away last December. She was like a spiritual daughter. And her parents, same processes, same steps, same stages, you know, same stages of grief. And the biggest one is that surrender. That's the part. And when you surrender, it's, you know, here's the thing about trust. You don't really know if you trust God until you don't understand. Because if you understand, there's no need for trust.
What a lie.
Right?
That is so good.
So when we sing, oh, for grace to trust him more, don't sing that. Because he will give you opportunities to trust him. But trust requires lack of understanding. Because if I understand, if I understand how that chair works, I don't have to trust gravity. I don't have to trust. If I understand, I don't have to have as much trust. So what God does is he brings situations in our life that we don't understand.
Yeah, that's right.
That we have to trust him anyway.
That's right.
That's how your trust increases. That's right. Is I don't understand how this happened. I understand why this happened. I don't understand. If you have the power to change it, why didn't you? I don't understand. Why didn't you prevent this? Why didn't you stop this? You know, my friend who died in a car accident. Why? I don't understand. So what do I do with that? I either run away from God or run into him. You know, and so I think some of the things in the book will bring you to an intersection of a place where you realize that God is with you. He has a plan, and pain is not punishment. You know, that's one of the things I had to overcome was, what did I do wrong that he had to die? And God's like, it's not even about that. You have to trust me. And so, yeah, the trust factor is huge because you find yourself in these opportunities to truly, honestly, you either abandon faith or you increase your faith. There's no option. You don't stay where you are. You don't freeze. You don't stay. You either drift further away or you run in closer. That's every time there's a crisis in our life. We either run in or we run out. You don't stay there. You don't stay in the same spot. So I think hopefully living beyond the loss will help people see that there actually is life beyond the loss. And that our loved ones that have gone before us, if you and I right now took this entire crew, went up to heaven and started interviewing people. So what do you think? You think they should move on? You think they should get stuck? What do you think they should do? Every single 100% of our interviewees would say, I want them to live their life. But we struggle with abandonment. We struggle with like we're betraying them if we live our life. Somehow us moving forward without them is betraying them. And I used to think every step forward was a step away from my husband because I was leaving him in 2020. But if you think about it, every step forward is a step closer to eternity. So it's not abandoning him. It's actually getting closer to him. The worst thing you can do is get stuck. And that's where I see a lot of people. And so hopefully this will help them get unstuck and live beyond their loss, whatever their loss is. And you know what? Let's just talk about this for a moment. There's a lot of people that have lost their business, lost their identity. They've lost things. It may not be a human that they lost, but they lost a dream. And they go through these same stages. You go through sorrow and sadness and struggle because I had this dream. I had this business. I had this relationship. I had this partnership. I had this vision, whatever it was, and it's not working out. Well, you still have to surrender.
Yeah.
Right? And then you have to reinvent. You can take what you've learned. I always say we don't win or lose. We win or learn.
Mm.
It's your perspective. So hopefully your paradigm will shift. Your perspective will shift. You'll find hope even in the midst of hopelessness.
One of the things, I was in my quiet time the other day, I was reading through Job, and the Holy Spirit showed me a different vantage point on Job than I'd ever read before. And one of the things that we were taught, what I was thinking through, and the Holy Spirit put in my heart, was that we read Job's story, and you get to the end, right, and God restores Job. And it was interesting. This was the first time I ever read it and thought to myself, he still lost his kids. He still lost his servants. And Job goes on to live his life in abundance, right? And it's a wonderful thing. But I thought about it. Job still had to deal with the grief of loss, still had to deal with waking up every day and seeing that one fence post that made himself think of his son, right? Or the one time, like when we lost my sister Erin, there'll be a perfume that I don't even know the name of it, but every time I smell this perfume, that's Erin. And we'll go on these walks. My family goes on walks at night, and I'll see the cardinal. And I'm not like a superstitious person, but these cardinals will be so strategic in their timing. And it just is this thing where God can be equally incredible in restoring, in fulfilling promises, in taking back what the enemy meant for your destruction. And you can have that, but you can also simultaneously have grief. You can simultaneously carry that weight in your heart. And I think a lot of times in my mind, before I went through any form of loss, I thought that healing and restoration was almost like that didn't exist in my life anymore. So that's not there anymore. But the truth is, like, Erin is still very much a part of us 5 kids, very much a part of the family group chat. And I still have voicemails from Erin and still have voice memos from Erin. And I can still feel pain and still be restored. And I think that there's a challenge for believers in that, to where we read the story and go, oh yeah, but just get to the end. God doubles, right? He just restores and he makes better. It's like, I wonder if Job at the back half of his life is got all this fortune and all these kids and the wife and all this stuff. And if I wonder at dinner time, he still sees that table in that chair. He still smells that perfume and goes, my daughter used to wear that. And so I love this book. I haven't had a chance to read it yet in full authenticity, but I know your heart. And this is an area of the faith that not a lot of people have talked about and know how to approach. And so, one, I want to honor you and thank you for taking this head on. I want to honor you for taking what the devil meant for destruction and turning it for good and being a light for these people. And I think for anybody who's watching this or listening to this podcast, if you're out there and you're struggling with grief, you're struggling with understanding why things happened in your life, what do I do next? What are my next steps? Please reach out to us with a direct message. We will put you in contact with resources that can help you. We'd be more than happy to facilitate getting your book into these people's hands. Jillian is somebody who, as a lifelong believer, someone who runs this podcast, I have the highest levels of respect for and the highest levels of confidence in her spiritual groundness. Who she is as a person is what you see Monday through Sunday. And I believe that this is a book that's going to set a lot of people free. So thank you for being on. Thank you for walking us through this. I'd like to close this out in prayer. And actually, if you're open to it for the first time ever on the podcast, would you close us out in prayer?
Absolutely. Thank you. That's such an honor.
Yes, ma'am.
Sure. Lord, thank you. Thank you that you promised that you would be close to the brokenhearted. God, I know whoever's watching this podcast, whatever time of day or night, Lord, they found themselves on this channel for a reason. It's because you heard their cry. You've heard their prayers. You've seen their tears. God, you've even seen their questions. And so you've led them to this place. Lord, I know you brought them here intentionally so that you could speak through us to their heart. Now, Father, I ask that you would just bring peace and comfort them. Lord, let them know that even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I'll fear no evil. God, there can't be a shadow without a light. So even if we walk in the shadow of death, God, you're there because you're the light that casts the shadow. So I pray, Lord, that right now in this very moment, they would feel your presence. They would feel peace and comfort like a warm blanket. God, that you would reassure them that this is a temporary season. And even though grief is real, it can coexist with love. The reason we grieve is because we did love. And so, God, our future is so bright and it's so beautiful. And it will include our past, but it won't if we stay paralyzed in our present. And so, Father, I ask that you would just give our friends who are watching this, listening to this, give them the strength to just take the next step. We don't have to take 10 steps. Just take the next step. You know what? Reach out. Find someone. DM this podcast, Lord. We will help them. Lord, I ask you just bless them and be with them. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.